Hi, it's time for good energy, and I'm Dr. Julie at Endeavor Health and Chiropractic. And today we're talking about when taking off the bandage is more stressful than the original wound. A couple of weeks ago, I got a cut right on my right finger, right just a little bit past the knuckle. And that is a rough spot to get a cut, as you know, because you're always bending your finger. You hold your pencil there, your pen there, your fork there. You pick up the gallon of milk, it rubs there. There are a lot of things that make that location very difficult to put a bandage on. And so because of that, I decided not to put a Band-Aid on. And it took about a week for that injury to heal. It got very inflamed and red. It got more difficult to hold the pencil, hold the gallon of milk. It was a rough time, but it was a choice I made. And part of the reason I made that is because I am a sensitive skin individual, which means that when I normally have a serious cut, I really want to wrap it up and protect it from the environment. I want to put an extra layer of adhesive tape on it so that it doesn't fall off, because I know that it takes longer for my skin to heal than most people. The problem is that when I have a serious wound and I wear a bandage, what happens is that when I take the bandage off or the tape off, I end up with that bright red, irritated, angry skin that sits there. And I have done some adhesive taping with myself and with other patients where we worked on muscular taping using something called kinesio tape. And for those skin sensitive people, when the 3 or 4 days come to take that adhesive tape off, their skin is actually so red and raw that it actually causes the skin to come up with it. So one of the keys about wound healing is you have to understand that there's a trade-off between protecting the wound from the environment and the fact that the adhesive used to protect that wound is actually going to cause an inflammation and eventually an invasion of the physical boundary of the body. That inflammation makes the skin more sensitive, makes it more active for infection and more active for inflammation. And in some cases, you can actually, when you take that adhesive off, you can actually pull off some of the skin, getting rid of the physical boundary that you have between you and the environment. And this is actually a metaphor for how we heal internally after either internal or emotional wounds. So if you have a wound, let's just say it's really simple. Let's say you have just a shoulder injury, and all you do is just change your posture, just because it feels better to hold that there. The problem is that you have now put your shoulder in a place where it can heal the tendon, or let's say you broke your arm or you broke your wrist. You have now put yourself into a posture that is not consistent with health. You have now put the spine out of its normal boundaries. We can also talk about the fact that, with that shoulder pain comes the pain of not being able to do, if it's your right arm, not being able to write or to type or to get your job done correctly. And with that inflammation, we look for coping mechanisms. So the posture is a coping mechanism. Sometimes people who are working on physical injuries or even emotional injuries end up using coping mechanisms to make that pain feel better by eating, by smoking, by drinking. Those are coping mechanisms, but those are Band-Aids to help with the original pain. And for other people, it's actually a loss of a personal boundary. So even though we're in pain, it makes us feel better to help somebody else out. Help somebody else out that isn't necessarily what we would normally do if we didn't have shoulder pain. We take on extra stuff because it is a coping mechanism for the pain that we feel. If we help somebody else out, they feel better, and then we feel better. So you're now putting a Band-Aid, whatever kind of Band-Aid, a different way you hold your posture, maybe eating because you don't have anything to do because you can't move your arm. or helping somebody out on a project that you normally wouldn't because you know that's not your cup of tea or you're not really into that thing. So when it comes time that shoulder is healed, let's say you've gotten your hand out of a cast, you've gotten your shoulder is healed, it's been, you're no longer in a brace, you are now back to normal. Now the problem is that because you've held that posture, because you've tried to cope with the pain in different methods, eating, smoking, whatever, eating a lot of sweets to get rid of some of that physical pain by making yourself feel better, you now have this boundary blurred where you have to fix the body from the posture that you were carrying, from the extra food that you were eating, or from the extra boundaries you let cross because you wanted to feel better by helping somebody else out. So the question is it better to keep the bandage on? You might even say, you know what, I'm physically stressed, I am emotionally stressed, I'm still eating, I've let people come in and take up space. If I tell everybody no and I try to work on myself, that's going to take time. That's going to take energy. That's going to take space that I don't necessarily have. But the thing is, just like taking the bandage off, just like taking the tape off of a long-term wound, even though the skin is red and raw and irritated, even though the physical boundary has been blurred, even though that place where the adhesive was is more likely going to be the next place that you have the wound, eventually the skin heals. If we think about it in terms of the body's coping mechanisms for pain, if you get that cast off and you realize that your shoulder has always been held low, you can get muscle work done. You can get adjustments done. It just is going to take time to put your posture back to normal. If, when you've been inactive because you've injured yourself, you've eaten a lot more, or you've drank a lot more, or you've taken up smoking, or you've smoked a lot more than you normally do, it's because you were coping with that pain. Now that the pain is gone, now that the wound is gone, it's time to pull the bandage off. And that requires reconnecting with your body, reconnecting with the physical sensation of coping, mindful eating, mindfulness. That takes time to then realign your internal organs and your internal systems, because when you've been eating poorly, you've thrown off your microbiome and they're really happy about all that sugar. Or when you've been smoking, your brain is really cool on the nicotine. Well, now you have to kind of let yourself get back to normal. So healing from a wound, we have to take the bandage off, but we understand that when we take the adhesive off, there is going to be some boundary blurring. And it's going to take time to put our alignment back into place, to lose the weight, to get our physical body, get ourselves back into our body again from that pain. And in terms of emotional boundaries, there are people that are going to push back when we say, you know what, we're feeling better now. We don't need to help you with your tasks. We've got other stuff we need to do. And putting that boundary up, there are going to be people that are going to push back. But if you, just like any other component of that bandage coming off, those relationships will heal. And people who really care about you and love you will understand that you took on that because helping them out helped you feel better. And now that you feel better, you can help them out, but you have to help them out in your way. All right, so I hope this analogy has helped. Sometimes we have wounds and we need to protect them. They can be emotional wounds, they can be physical wounds, and we need to put a protective boundary on them. But that protective boundary is usually a coping mechanism until that wound heals. The problem is when we look at that coping mechanism and say, we can't take that off. We can't step into our boundaries. We can't stop eating all that sugar because it was helping us. But when the wound is gone, sometimes it's better just to rip off the tape and understand that the body will return to normal. The posture will get back to where it needs to be. The boundaries that you need to set up for yourself between you and the other people around you are going to heal, and the people that care about you the most will help that. All right. If you are interested in more of this concept of emotional and physical body healing and the connection between those two, make sure that you have gone through the previous videos at Endeavor Health and Chiropractic. If you are a woman, please sign up for the healing equation, and there's just a short form to fill out and we can get you in. And we talk about this stuff in a little bit more depth about how wound healing and how rebalancing the body and how healing the body causes things to change. All right, until next week, I hope you have a great time, and I will see you then. Take care.